Another Stender shear?
I like the Stender when it's here. It's just not usually here.
It's much nicer around.
Yeah. So the it's true. That's why I do it. The topic last night was Das Torah. Now, a corollary of the topic of Das Torah, which is important to discuss, is the reason why we can rely on, say, the Mishnah Berurah and Paskening Halacha. Now, right, this is something which we spoke. This is an issue.
It's because it's accepted, not because of us.
Well, why would people accept it? That's kind of like, what's the chicken and what's the egg? For example, now I'm going to explain in great detail in a moment. For example, with the Mishnah Berurah, the Mishnah Berurah was a fine Talmid Chacham. He wasn't the greatest posek of his generation. And he was not the greatest posek of his generation. As a matter of fact, the evidence for that is that in every Mishnah Berurah, you'll find in the first volume the Haskamos, the letters of approbation, which the Chafetz Chaim sought from those people who were regarded as being the great Gedol, the great posek in the generation.
Who can you like name a few?
Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan Spector from Kovna, for whom Wayu's yeshiva is named. Reb Mordechai Meltzer from I'm not sure he was at the time. Lida, I think. The author Tchelos Mordechai. There's a third one. I forgot what the third one is.
Was it the Gorbachev?
What?
The Gorbachev?
Rogachover? No, he was younger than the Chafetz Chaim.
What about the Rabbi Chaim Ozer?
No, Chaim Ozer was younger also. But that's not volume Aleph?
It is a volume Aleph.
Let me see.
Did I skip it? Mine at home has it for sure.
The thing is, the first one was just put out my... No, here it is. Right here. Yitzchak Elchanan Spector, Mordechai Kalatsky, whose last name was also Meltzer. He was my... By the way, this Mordechai Kalatsky is my great uncle. Okay.
That many generations up? He's only lived 100 years ago.
Yeah. And then Rabbi Yosef... both Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Raval, and Shlomo HaKohen, who were the Dayanim in Vilna, they signed on the same letter together. So these were considered to be the great poskim of the generation, actually. Oh, and there are two more. On the other side of the page here. Reb Ben Sion Ben Arieleh from Kalaveria, and Reb Shmuel Zanvil was the Rav in Warsaw. So there were... These were the great poskim in the generation. And yet the Mishnah Berurah is remembered by us much more than most of the names, with the possible exception of Yitzchak Elchanan. But even him, I think also the Mishnah Berurah is much more known by our generation than any of the people who gave him Haskamos. Moreover, there are constantly differences of opinion, perhaps not extraordinary differences of opinion, but there are differences between the Mishnah Berurah and the Aruch HaShulchan. And later poskim also argue the Mishnah Berurah. Chazon Ish argues in the Mishnah Berurah quite regularly. Certainly you will find occasionally Reb Moshe arguing on the Chayil of the Mishnah Berurah. And the question is then, therefore, how can we rely on the Mishnah Berurah? Or for that matter, Hungarian Jews don't use the Mishnah Berurah, they use the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, right? And Sfardim don't use the Mishnah Berurah, they use the Ben Ish Chai, but Ben Ish Chai, primarily the Kaf HaChaim.
More than Yalkut Yosef?
Yalkut Yosef is a much more recent work, and it's I don't know that it's been accepted. It probably will be at some point, but right now it's not yet accepted to the extent it's Kaf HaChaim. It's a basic statement.
Real quick question: is there any Nefesh HaChaims in English? Because before I forget.
No, Nefesh HaChaim is not translated.
It's a
Science work and Hebrew skills. What?
Kabbalistic work? Is it, did Ashkenazim have the same... I'm sorry. Just for a second. The Ashkenazim have the same restriction on not being allowed to translate the Zohar? Or any other Kabbalistic work?
No, it was maybe voluntary, but not obligatory. Okay, so the answer, of course, is what Shlomo said. Shlomo said is that there was a Kabbalah. There was an acceptance. There's been an acceptance in Klal Yisrael. But that in of itself requires explanation. Why should people accept the Mishnah Berurah? Why should it have superseded the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch in Lithuania? For that matter, why did anybody accept the Shulchan Aruch? The Shulchan Aruch had its adversaries when it was printed. Rav Shlomo Luria, the Maharshal, who was no small posek, was opposed to the Shulchan Aruch being printed. The Rambam certainly had many detractors. So how do we understand that? And going back earlier, the Gemara itself, we are only bound by Talmud Bavli because, the Rambam says, because there was universal acceptance of Talmud Bavli as the basic source of law for the Jewish people. But that in of itself requires some explanation. But why did we accept Talmud Bavli? Yeah.
I have an answer.
Go ahead.
Because it takes a lot of work to actually make one of these compendiums, these codes of law, and most people don't want to do it. So when we have one, we have very limited amount of them, we generally end up accepting.
Well, that's a very expedient reason. In other words, basically because this guy was,
So we don't wanna.
Yes, how many people made
That's what Mishnah Berurah writes. Mishnah Berurah writes people are lazy to read the Shulchan Aruch, so I'm writing Mishnah Berurah. It's an easy way to get it.
okay, yeah.
Why can't we just find out halacha through responsa? I mean, responsa, like,
The point is qualification.
they ask all the questions already. After the Torah, Shulchan Aruch, they have questions and answers on every single thing, every single generation. I mean,
Because they disagree with each other.
Okay, but I mean, you could see the svar of one versus the svar of the other.
You could, but then you would have to, every single sugi you'd have to research on your own. Who has time for that? Right?
Basically, we're lazy. That's why.
No, that was what he said. I didn't say that.
Mishnah Berurah always says the same because people don't have the time nowadays.
No.
How many people made a parallel to Mishnah Torah?
So let's address the issue. The Rav Yonasan Eibshitz, the author of the Tumim, he's author of many Sfarim. He was one of the great rabbis in the mid 1700s. He writes, there is halacha and cheshem mishpat. If I sue you, and there are 99 sources which indicate that I'm right, and one source that indicates that you're right, I cannot collect. Even though there are 99 sources in poskim, chuvos, right, which say that I, the claimant, am right. If you have one posek who says like you don't have to pay. Why? Because in the Choshen Mishpat, in monetary matters, we have a principle that you can say, Kimli, I hold like that one posek. And since the principle in Choshen Mishpat, in monetary matters, is Hamotzi Mechavero Lav Harai. If I want to extract money from you, I have to demonstrate that you definitely owe me money. That's not considered definitive. It's beyond a reasonable doubt.
So it can doubt.
Yes, and we could kill you. It was a capital case. We could kill you on the basis of the 99-1 majority. But since it's not a capital case, it is a, so to speak, criminal monetary case. So therefore, you get to keep the money, even if you have one posting, only one place to rely on.
Probably so we can download music on the internet.
Yes, if you had a poster and you really held like him, sincerely and truly.
Just in that one aspect?
What?
Just in that one aspect that you're allowed to download on everything?
No, in that one aspect.
Yeah, so I'm sure there's a poster that allows you to download.
But what if you have, like, where do you look to respond on the one that has the best explanation for?
But we don't do that, Choshen Mishpat.
Huh?
We don't do that.
Okay, but what if I wanted to look into something? Like,
Of course. Yeah, and
I'd have the perfect ability to do that.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the Rav Yonasan Eibshitz says that you can only say kimli if an opinion, in other words, I hold like that isolated opinion, if that opinion does not run counter to the Shulchan Aruch or the Rambam.
Huh.
Why is that? Because he says it is clear from the way that the Shulchan Aruch and Rambam were written, concisely yet precisely, in a manner which and the way they've been attacked, and over the years by the commentaries numerous times on almost every single point, and yet a resolution has almost always been found to the questions with by which they were attacked. So therefore it is clear, says Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz, that the Shulchan Aruch and Ramah were written Beruach HaKodesh, that there was divine intervention in their writing, and therefore they are definitive, and an opinion which might have been a valid source upon which to rely prior to the Shulchan Aruch and Ramah being being accepted by Klal Yisrael, now no longer has any validity whatsoever. So what the Rabbi Yonasan Eifetz is explaining is why Klal Yisrael was mekabel the Shulchan Aruch, why Klal Yisrael was mekabel the Ramah. This is a very important point, because when you go back to Shas itself, there are those people who assert that they are Orthodox, which is an assertion which is incorrect in my opinion, but the Orthodox who assert that Amoraim and even Tanoim are really not qualitatively different than you and I. In other words, they were human beings and were human beings. It says in the Gemara that they did miraculous things. If nothing else, that many of them were conversing with Eliyahu Hanavi, and right, it's all metaphorical. Right, it's all metaphorical, and therefore, really, the totality of the binding nature of Gemara becomes this acceptance which we accepted upon ourselves. And this that of course, if you have that attitude, leads that acceptance to be perceived as a unfair hindrance or an unfair shackling of our religion. And that's why you have many people who have throughout the course of the year said, you know what, since we're just as smart as they were, perhaps even smarter, so therefore we can undermine they can undermine their halacha. Perhaps the acceptance already is no longer true acceptance because we don't like this anymore, and therefore perhaps we can somehow work out a change. That really, the early conservative movement, it doesn't exist in that shape anymore. The conservative movement has moved on to well beyond where it originally began. But initially, the conservative movement was predicated on this simple insight, which is that there is no concept of Yeridas Hadoros. There's no concept of the generations becoming less and less wise, less and less intuitive, and less knowledgeable. So, if you take that, if you chuck that, so then, in fact, there's really no reason not to argue on the Gemara. After all, we look at us today, we have all this technology, we're very advanced. We're probably even smarter than they were. So therefore, we should be allowed to argue what they say. So this aspect of the Kedusha of Chazal, in my opinion, is an essential component in understanding the nature of the Kabbalah, of the acceptance. It wasn't arbitrary. It was impelled logically and emotionally by the qualities which Chazal possessed. Now, once somebody gave me a book which was published by some professor in NYU who tried to prove that Chazal were really lowlives and boorish individuals, Rahman al-Islam. So what? And not YU. NYU. But that obviously, if that were the case, then there would be no reason to be makabel the words of these louts, Rahman al-Islam, any more than what we have told ourselves. Yeah.
Wait, so if this person was using the Gemara, obviously the source we talked about, then if he considers a reliable source, then he would have to also accept the advantage the Gemara has that these people actually write great in their learning.
Right.
So
but he doesn't.
That doesn't make sense.
You focus on the negative. Well, an axe to grind, obviously.
Yeah. Okay.
So since with the Shulchan Aruch became accepted as the Ruach HaKodesh, you mentioned this, that not everything is written with Ruach HaKodesh is right.
That's correct.
So then, what gives us acceptance just because it's written with Ruach HaKodesh?
That's correct. So that's why what the Tumim says is that. But now I've established what really leads Klal Yisrael to accept something is their recognition that either the writers or the writer of that text, was a person of profound divine accomplishment and profound extraordinary intellect. That principle is beautiful, but it's not completely true. Because when we say that we accept the Shulchan Aruch, for example, or the Ramah, it doesn't mean the Shulchan Aruch Ramah. It means the Shulchan Ramah together with the Taz, the Magen Avraham, the Shach, whoever they are, in the various different volumes, which comment on the Shulchan Aruch. So actually, there's a certain fuzziness which extends out the acceptance, not to just the Shulchan Aruch itself, but also to certain clarifications and even disagreements which occurred in the period of transition between the writing of the Sefer and its universal acceptance. And this can go on for 100 years. It happened also at the time of the Gemara. Rabbanon Savuroi and the early Gaonim, right, were transition figures who also are incorporated in the Gemara itself. And it happened even with the Tanoim. Rav, the Gemara says, Tano Upolig. Rav can argue on Tanoim. Right? He was allowed to do so. And seems the other Amoraim also might have been allowed to do so, but certainly Rav was allowed to do so. Yeah?
I would say that wasn't originally, like in the times of the Gemara, halacha and your own personal opinion was individualized between each person to decide what they felt was right and what they wanted to do. So,
what do you mean? Every person had their own individual halacha?
No. I mean that, but like if you wanted to follow, like you would have different things where like you learn the Gemara even now, where you have there's halachas and people like from Rabbi Yossi or Rabbi Abba, they all have their own people, with their own opinions. And if it doesn't really seem like obviously none of them would be wrong or none of them would really be right, I feel like in Judaism it's all based on your own personal experience, how you feel. So at what point can you say, what halacha do you approve of, what halacha do you don't approve of, and on what standards can you really say?
So let's think. This is a very complex issue you just raised.
Before we go there, no, it's gonna take a long time. This is a short thing.
Is this on topic?
Yes.
What is it?
What's it called? You said that because it's and they were written with Ruach HaKodesh, therefore we accept this or whatever. And then a lot of times you hear that because something's written with Ruach HaKodesh, and therefore it's like a Halacha L'Maisa, we have to follow it. I don't understand.
I didn't say that.
Well, it seems...
I said because there's a step which you got right the first time, but just left out.
What? Tell me.
The recognition of the Ruach HaKodesh leads to the acceptance. It's the acceptance which makes it binding.
Okay.
Okay, back to this question.
It's not fair.
Well, you're right. That was short one. Now, as for the longer one, what's your name?
Saadia.
Saadia from where?
Baltimore.
So, yeah. So Saadia, there's a Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi said, basically, let me actually, before I give the answer, I'm going to tell you the thesis of my answer, and then I'm going to explain it. Okay? The thesis of my answer is that halacha is not a legal system in the same sense as a secular legal system, and this really strikes at the core of the Bekhafarian approach, that's my approach, which is that Torah is more of an art than a science, and therefore, when halacha is not a law per se. By the way, there is a Hebrew word for law. It's chok. Halacha means a pathway, a way in which to walk, and that's not just by coincidence. There's chok, which is a law, mishpat, which is a judgment, and the halacha, which is a pathway. The halacha is a pathway by which one proceeds in this world to do the will of God. These pathways are supposed to be laid out by scholars, but it's not enough to be a scholar, and it's not even, and this is my chiddush, it's not even most important that you're a scholar. It's most important that you are a person who learns Torah Lishma, and a person who's completely committed to learning Torah for the right reasons. Why is that? Because it says, the Yerushalmi says, and the Ritva brings us down in Eruvin, that when Moshe Rabbeinu went up to heaven, so Hashem taught him on every issue 49 ways to say Tameh, 49 ways to say Tahor, 49 ways to say Aser, 49 ways to say Mutter, 49 ways to say Chayav, 49 ways to say Potter. What?
This is where we get the joke where you put two Jews together, you get three opinions.
Yeah, but it's really a mistake. It's 98. So the and it's one Jew. 98 opinions. We're much more messed up than the jokes admit. Right, totally off on a tangent. Once I brought up, once I said that, I know I was reading this morning American Heritage magazine, just kind of a new issue, and it came out. It has an article about Herbert Hoover's response to the Depression. So what's interesting is one of the first banks that failed the Depression, 400,000 accounts were lost, was a bank called the Bank of the United States, and the primary account holders in this bank were immigrant Jews who were garment workers, who thought that Bank of the United States means that this bank was run by the federal government. And so they put all their money in it, and they lost all their money. So now we understand why Jews voted for FDR in droves in 1932. But in any event, it's just another one of our problems. So the story.
Voting for FDR?
What?
Voting for FDR?
No, not realizing that Bank of the United States has nothing to do with the government, like Bank of America today. The Moshe Rabbeinu asked Hashem, so how's anybody ever going to determine halacha? Right? If there are 98 possibilities, contradictory possibilities, how are you ever going to determine halacha? So Hashem said, it's given over to the Chachamim in each every generation to determine the halacha for that generation. Now that doesn't mean that the Chachamim go through all 98 ways and say, for our generation this way is correct. What it means is that Hashem pre-programmed, and this goes into the Ishbitzer actually, Hashem pre-programmed Talmidei Chachamim with certain attitudes. And he planted the Talmidei Chachamim with the attitudes for which are relevant to that generation in that generation. Those attitudes are not just talking about philosophical attitudes, but halachic attitudes. So therefore, and there can be contradictory ones in the generation. There can be clashes, or they can be in harmony, and people and get along relatively well together. And there can be, for that matter, approaches which are wrong for the generation, but Hashem sends them down anyway to punish us or to test us, to make sure we don't follow them, right? So
who says that one?
It's a pasuk in the Torah, the pasuk about Navi Sheker. The Torah says it's an amazing thing. It's a Sefer Torah. In case don't remember.
I did that one. I did that one. Yeah.
So the Torah says that there's going to be Navi Sheker. V'nasan os omofes, and he's going to make wonders and signs, and he's going to be successful in making these signs.
He's not a posik shaker; he's a navi shaker.
Oh, you mean it's bad? It's worse to be a posik shaker than a navi shaker?
I don't think this
yes, because that's tighter that people actually follow. Navi, you don't have to follow.
Okay, nice try. So yes, it's quite possible that Hashem sets us up, frames us, or traps us in this manner. We're tested to see if we follow along. But in any event, so the idea is that the Torah is very flexible. It can accommodate many, many different viewpoints and even contradictory viewpoints. But it has to be that the person expressing the viewpoint has the qualifications. The qualifications are certainly some degree of scholarship, but much more the degree of Torah Lishma, learning Torah for the right reasons, Avas Hashem, love of Hashem, and Yiras Hashem, and awe of Hashem, in order for the posek to be a legitimate posek. This is a critical issue, because otherwise somebody could ask, listen, the conservative rabbis seem to be very, very significant scholars, and they rule that one is allowed to ride in a car on Shabbos, right? Drive a car on Shabbos. I'm a layman. I don't know the difference between that rabbi. All I know is that this guy is a learned man and that guy's a learned man. Why can't I follow the learned man who lets me drive on Shabbos? What?
Yes, it is.
The answer is because he doesn't believe Torah comes from heaven, so therefore he's not relevant. He's not irrelevant to this entire conversation. Whereas you must be a member of the framework.
Did that come when we asked the Rambam, the whole concept of Torah coming from heaven, Daniel? Or was that even true before?
It's a Gemara. Yeah. Gemara in the dark. Yeah.
How about the Bachet? Some people say he lacked scholarship, but he had a tremendous...
He wasn't a posek.
How about his with all attitude, with all the error in Avodas Hashem?
What's the wrong with Derech Avodas Hashem?
There's nothing wrong. I'm just saying that don't you believe that the path to Avodas Hashem are not determined by...
No, not at all.
So not
I'm
the historical...
No, I'm eagerly anticipating Shabbatism. Well, it doesn't have to be. If the pathway one takes in being Oved Hashem within the framework of Halacha is very much an open. It's very much open for a broad array of approaches.
Yeah, right, but no Ashgacha at all. Well, no.
What do you mean Ashgacha? Of course, there's Ashgacha involved. In other words, if Hashem planted you in this generation to promote Shabbatism, so that actually would be Hashgacha, right? He says
He's Shabbat. He's Shabbat.
That should be contrary to Shabbat.
right. Yes, I didn't even think of that, but Shabbatism would sound very bad. Yes. So in fact, there's the Rambam says in Hilchos Malachim, he says it is forbidden for non-Jews to create new religions. Nowhere does he write that it's forbidden for Jews to create new religions.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's why he did like Muhammad. That's why he did that.
I think one is the Kal Vachomer from the other.
No, not at all. No, because the Rambam holds that obviously by non-Jews they are limited to their Sheva mitzvahs, right? That's what they have. You want to have religion? Fine, join Judaism. If you don't join Judaism, there's no religion, right? But
Cults also considered religions?
I think so, yeah. But in Judaism, there's no such restriction. We don't say, you're part of a religion. Now you want to make a variation on the thing.
You really have to be like stupid to go make a new religion.
Wait a minute, what's Hasidus?
Hasidus is not a new religion.
Why not?
It's the same religion with a different attitude.
No. What do you mean to say? It's the same nation with a different religion.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I mean, it's.
Listen, I'm obviously being somewhat facetious here, but the idea is a true one. You could call Hasidus a separate religion, and it's not a problem.
But we have the Shulchan Aruch, which everybody abides by.
But Shulchan Aruch doesn't say what you make primary, Torah or Tefillah.
No, but wait. It does. It gives you the time of Zman.
What?
It gives you the time for Zman, the right time to pray, the right time to learn Torah.
But sometimes you see...
I say it doesn't say where to put an emphasis.
Well, I mean, if I have 2 minutes left to daven, I could learn Torah. Obviously, I have to daven right now, not learn Torah.
Yeah, but let's say, what should I do most of my day?
Learn Torah if you have.
Obviously, it doesn't say that. It says the person divide his days in 3s. But that's only the time which he allocates to learning. So he should divide in 3: Mikra, Mishnah, and Gemara.
We don't do that in Yeshiva?
No, we don't. No. But that's because when the Rambam says even though it comes from Chazal, it's good advice, but not.
That's not halacha. That's not halacha.
Right, that's not halacha. So that's why That's why these areas are flexible.
So even Hasidim have to follow.
If a Chassid wants to the Hasidim came up with this idea, and it's a very successful idea, of a tish, and a tish became an essential component of serving God within Hasidic circles.
Fine.
So that's a beautiful new religious observance, right?
Mm-hmm. Is that Baal Tosef?
No, as long as you don't assert that it's a Doraisa or a Rabban.
Baal Tosef is on Doraita?
When you assert it's Doraisa, yes.
But
so we can
wait, that's not true.
It doesn't matter.
Did you know there are people who don't cut their kids' hair till they're 3 years old?
Yeah.
There's no source for that.
No, it's just a cute custom to do.
So it's a new religion?
No, it's a custom. There's no...
Religion,
every single custom new religion.
It's semantics.
Rabbi, this entire time when people grow up and then their kids are told you can't do this, you're going to burn hell. You can't do that, you're going to burn hell. and then you realize you get older, like half of that was complete and total lie. You know, because I mean, I learned Halacha Shabbos and the concept of muksa, and when I was a kid, you know, if you touch something, it's considered muksa, you can't do it. When really, you're allowed to touch it, you can't move it.
Right.
So when you touch a car on Shabbos, it's completely fine. You're even allowed to sit on a car, you
Right.
can't move it.
Right.
So people take things to an extreme, and people have to realize the difference between minhag, halacha, things that are wrong, things that are right, and what you can keep to yourself and what you can tell someone else to do.
The Avos Rabbi Nassim, which is basically the Tosefta for Avos, says that the reason why Chava sinned is because Adam did not explain to her Eve in the Garden of Eden, is because Adam did not explain to her that which I said not to touch the tree is only my gezerah, my fence around what Hashem said, which is not to eat the fruit. And therefore there we learn a person is not allowed to be machmir. Just like he's not allowed to be makel, he's not allowed to be machmir without explaining that his chumrah is only a chumrah and not the law itself.
And also with milk and meat, like the whole concept originally is you can't cook milk and meat together. So people have this stringency where they even wait.
Right, but they're the Rabbanim and Minhagim, the two separate levels.
I know. So Rabbanim say that you wait 3 hours. Some Rabbanim you say you wait 6 hours. So everybody even posking that you even just you choose something, you clean out your teeth, and then you can eat something else.
Right. If it's after the Suda, yeah.
Yeah.
So
people just have to know the differences.
What?
That's not too. That's the thing. Is like, what's too machmir? What's like legitimate? And what's something you can choose?
What?
What's too machmir? What's too makel? And what's something? I mean, like technically, you know, if you think about it, I would rather hold 3 hours than 6 hours because it's more convenient for me. But I can handle 6 hours. The question is, should I do something that's convenient or do something that's more strict because I know I can handle it?
Are you about tshuva?
Me? No, not.
Too bad.
Well, that's the thing. Like, what's the difference?
If you're about tshuva, then you can make him. You can accept minhagim at random.
So what? Why does that prevent someone then if they're from birth? What's the whole point?
To a person that
What causes that giant?
Say because that universal Kabbalah, universal acceptance, which made Talmud Bavli binding upon us, is regarded as going down even to the level of communities. In other words, the Kabbalahs of the community in which you are born are binding upon you. And one of the Kabbalahs of the community in which you were born, if you're born a Litvak, let's say, is 6 hours. Right? So therefore, you actually have riding upon you a restriction which is on the order of a vow. Now, you might find some chacham, some sage who will, what's the word? How do you say in English? Annul that vow. Yeah. You probably won't, though.
Wait, no, I also heard that when you get married and when you get bar mitzvah are the 2 times where you can change halacha and minhagim that you have.
No, that's not true.
No.
Yeah, I heard that was true. Like
a woman can change if she gets married, not a man.
I heard a man when they get married, they're supposed to get they announce the before. I heard it.
Urban legend.
Oh yeah, that's the next. That's
I know.
That's next.
We've already done one, right? In fact, Rav Ovadia Yosef will arrange for you. Are you an Ashkenazi or Sephardi?
Does it look like it?
I can't tell.
Exactly, that's the thing. People say I'm Sephardi, people say I'm Ashkenaz. I look at my research, I'm probably Sephardi, I just don't really know.
Right, so Rav Ovadia Yosef will arrange a conversion ceremony for any Ashkenazi who wants to become a Sephardi.
You're allowed to?
Right? He obviously holds you're allowed to. He holds it's a mitzvah. Right?
You're allowed to make a conversion.
Conversion ceremony.
Oh, wait.
Yes.
I guess I'm
But you
Sephardi
said
now.
before, does that apply also to a person who decides to go through a conversion process?
Absolutely.
He can get to choose which minhag you follow.
Anybody who if you know anybody who's going to convert, have them see me before they do it. I will advise them to take on 1 hour between Fleshik and Milchik, and that not more than that. The same is true about Tshuva also. Somebody comes from scratch, his minhagim have been broken. He has no affinity to previous minhagim.
Well, but if I know what my grandparents said,
doesn't matter.
Why not?
He doesn't have
Because the Kabbalah wasn't passed down to you.
Well, no. Let's say my parents were not religious.
being broken.
Wait, my parents were not religious, but they always kept 6 hours. So what?
Yeah, listen. By Sephardim, they're always. Sephardim is no such thing as not religious. Only Ashkenazim have this.
Oh, so Sephardi is basically.
Yeah, Sephardim basically stuck. Yeah. Because the Sfardim can drive to shul on Shabbos, but they still keep 6 hours between the meet and bill. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing, believe me. I'm not saying this, I'm disparaging that for a moment. So we've mentioned many times here in this shir, although perhaps never on tape, that actually Sfardim are so much simpler and so less neurotic than the Ashkenazim. We Ashkenazim.
Look at him as a bismillah. She always argues about it.
Yeah, and he goes around
Jewish, he's supposed to argue.
that all of the bad things in the Gemara are all just metaphors. Don't worry about it. Everybody's going to heaven. And it's going to be
I see the word exaggeration, I feel metaphors.
Yeah.
Oh, metaphors and exaggeration. Sorry.
Yeah.
Forgot the other side. He's Sephardi, by the way.
Right, so getting back, so the reason why a conservative rabbi's psak is not a valid psak, it's not because he can't do the scholarship. He might be able to do the scholarship. But he doesn't have, because the halacha is not a legal code, but rather a living connection between us and Hashem, and the pathway by which we proceed to fulfill the will of God in this world. So if you don't believe in the tenets, the basic 13 tenets which the Rambam lays out, you can't participate in the game. Some mixed metaphors. You can't go out and play. You're not eligible for this entire game.
Wait, there was a rabbi, actually was a professor in one of the Israeli universities who wrote that a tshuva, how it's preferred and halachically legal for a person to have a pelegish. Did you hear this? So I don't know what's his religious status is, but why can't I say, if I was to be a rabbi, I could use his reasoning if it's a valid reasoning, even though he might not be up to parts of, hashkafically there. Well, what stops me from taking his reasoning and saying, hey, listen, I pass on this.
Right, but I would trust you more than him, even though he's a big scholar, and you're not, no offense. But I would trust you more. Because I know your motivations are come from Yirah Shamayim, his don't. There was a tshuva put out in the 1930s by Professor Louis Ginsburg of the Jewish Theological Seminary, who was an amazing Talmud Chacham, but not particularly religious. They say once that one of the many jokes they say about him is that Professor Ginsburg, who was a Talmud of Tells back in Lithuania, once walked into a building with an old Jew, and an apartment building, and the Jew said, Rebbe, am I allowed kids to take the elevator on Shabbos? So he said, Ginsburg said no. So the old Jew goes to the staircase and starts going up 40 flights of stairs. He's bursting, he's panting, he can't take it anymore. And finally he gets to the right floor, and Louis Ginsburg is there standing, fresh and unflustered, and clearly has gone up the elevator. so the old Jew asks Rabbi, by the way, this is, I think, if I recall correctly, I read this in Louis Ginsburg's son biography of his father. So he says that, so the old Jew asked Rabbi Professor Ginsburg, but didn't you say it's usher to go up in an elevator? So he said, yes, it is usher to go up in an elevator. So you had people like that who were able to separate halacha and scholarship from daily life. And such a person cannot be a legitimate source. Now, what happened was, Louis Ginsburg wrote a very fundamental tshuva in the 1930s during the Prohibition, when alcohol was prohibited in the United States, allowing the use of grape juice for arba kosos, for the Seder, and for Kiddush. This tshuva has been plagiarized numerous times by right-wing poskim, and used as their basis for allowing the grape juice used for arba kosos and Kiddush and Havdalah.
Was it a big Kiddush?
What?
Was this a big Kiddush?
At the time, it was a big Kiddush, yeah. Right. So then, grape juice is a relatively recent invention. I want you to know, Mr. Welch invented grape juice, I think, about 100 years ago. Before that, all grape juice was on the road to be fermented to wine. It's just we caught it early enough; it wasn't so alcoholic yet. It wasn't yet fermented. But this concept of arresting the process and creating a juice which is never going to ferment, that's a reasonably new phenomenon. So they event. So the tshuva is quoted not by source, not attributed in many places, and so much so, by the way, that the Catholic Church is matir using grape juice instead of wine for the sacraments.
Because of the tshuva.
On the basis, I don't remember if it's based on Louis Ginsburg's tshuva or Moshe's tshuva.
Is that Rabbi Tversky?
Really?
Yes.
This is the Rabbi Tversky story of the alcoholic.
Yeah, Rabbi runs to the story of Rabbi Tversky.
Right.
That he had an alcoholic in his clinic who was a priest. So he said, my life is destroyed, I cannot go back to be a priest because, on Sundays we have to drink the wine. I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah, this is the story. Yes, this is the story. Yeah.
So Rabbi said, well, by us we use grape juice for Shabbos, so maybe you guys could do it. So I never asked. So they go all the way up to the Pope, and the Pope says, well, it's good for the juice, it's good for us.
Yeah, right, so that's the way the story goes. I don't know if it's a true story, but it's a cool story.
Rabbi heard from Tversky himself.
Oh, yeah? Okay. So the...
So it's only third person version. What is it called again?
Broken telephone?
Telephone, yeah.
Yeah, like third...
Chabro Chavis.
Third person
It's
sort of.
okay. By the way, I want to tell you, I want to go off on a tangent again. In the 1930s, we don't have any examples of this, but if you go to downtown neighborhoods like Lower East Side or old Jewish neighborhoods like East New York and Brownsville or very similar other places, there are huge shuls. Phenomenally large, beautiful, ornate shuls.
So conservative or reform, right?
No, they're Orthodox too.
Jewish.
They're Orthodox too.
They all stuck in synagogue.
And we don't have those types of... They don't build shuls like that anymore, the way they built them in the 30s. Why is that?
Because actually, originally, things got more expensive. The planning got less developed. Architecture.
No, that's the Pashup shot, but it's not the truth. The truth is, rabbis were, because of Jewish law, rabbis were allowed to get special dispensations to sell sacramental wine. Now, there's still a wine today which is called sacramental. I don't know if they still have it. I used to when I was a kid. There was sacramental kind of wine. So I forget what it's called. Sacramental Concord grape, whatever it was. So the rabbis were allowed to sell sacramental wine for sacramental purposes, and the mafia knew this, and the way that, and they wanted to use these licenses, and the amount of licenses, the number of licenses you got to sell sacramental wine was based on the number of seats you had in your synagogue. So the mafia would pay for these large synagogues in order to get more liquor licenses. So
All makes sense now.
what?
All makes sense.
Yes. So I have an article on this at home. I could ask, which actually verifies
Can we
this.
switch to the Jewish...
Yes, but there was one other thing, which is just to sum up that. So Ruach HaKodesh is not necessarily the reason, it's not the reason why halacha is binding, but rather it is very often the reason why we accept a certain halachic source, and it's the acceptance which makes it binding. So that's why Mishnah Berurah, for example, was accepted not because it was written in the Ruach HaKodesh, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, I don't know, but because the Chafetz Chaim was known to be a particularly pious and meticulously observant individual, and because he received great haskamos from the great poskim in the generation, therefore the acceptance followed that. So the acceptance is what makes it binding, but it's on the basis of the knowledge that these people were extraordinary people, and the works they were extraordinary works. Okay, that's for tonight's topic.